Kia ora koutou. My name is James Russell, and if you're here, you've found Mad Surf Stories. I'm a surfer, former journo, and author of surf fiction. There's a bit more about that at the end of the podcast if you're interested. But most of all, I'm an enthusiastic appreciator of a good story, especially if it has surfers or surfing involved. There's a rich vein of stories out there in the surf community, of exploration, heroism, yard sales, wildlife encounters, loose units, disasters, and just general epicness. It's those yarns I plan to mine with Mad Surf Stories, so if you have one or know of one, get in touch by emailing me at james@dragonbrothersbooks.com. Righto, on with the show. Chris Nel, welcome to Mad Surf Stories.
Thanks for having me. It's the first time I've done one of these, so hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, so you live in the same hometown as one of our other interviewees, Dr. Will Allen, and I think you said he was at, you thought he might go to the same gym as you. Have you run into him?
Yeah, funnily enough, if it's the same Will, my wife runs a company called Outfit North, which is a health and fitness facility up there, and I'm pretty sure Will's was one of our clients for a time there, and he jumped in for one of our men's sessions, funnily enough. But little did I know that he had a bit of a wild background with his surfing and all that kind of carry on.
Yeah, you'll be able to swap stories. Before we get into your story, I thought you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, how old you are, what you do. So you said you were born in South Africa, right?
Yeah, and then we were a classic kind of story of a family that moved across the ditch. I was about 10, not even, I think 9, and mum and dad kind of were looking for some different options, and ended up in Wellington, which is probably a pretty solid culture shock going from sunny, I suppose the climate where we grew up in South Africa on the east coast is a lot like the Gold Coast almost, and then windy Wellington became home, which was definitely a bit of a culture shock, but yeah, for better or for worse, good character building and awesome waves over there and pretty amazing upbringing. So we're always in our cars and camping over in the Wairarapa and chasing waves and all that stuff. We definitely had a pretty free-range childhood, and gave me a pretty strong affiliation with the water, and now we live in the Bay of Islands, right up north. So yeah, we kind of definitely got over the cold and moved north for a pretty cool climate, and yeah, absolutely love it and get in the water as much as I can.
Yeah, cool. So was it your dad or your mum that were surfers, or both?
We actually picked it up as a family, funnily enough. So we all went on holiday and grabbed a surfboard and kind of learned together. And I've got 2 younger brothers, and it's a pretty awesome setup, really, because quite often there's all 5 of us in the water and sharing waves, and out there it never gets too crowded when we go and visit the family at the Batch at Castle Point. So it's very privileged, and everyone's still surfing and very much into it. So it's a pretty cool bonding session normally.
Sounds good, man. So right, let's take you back. So we're going back to 2009. How old would you have been then?
Because I would have been a long time ago. I was actually thinking about this, trying to remember all the details when you asked me to come on. And I'm pretty sure I was about 19 or 20 at the time, and just starting.
And it's actually just gone, right? It was October, I think. So it's just 16 years just gone.
Yeah, is it that long? Yep, probably right there.
You went for a holiday to Samoa.
Yeah, so it was that kind of life stage where I finally had enough resources to start doing a few adventures, and it was one of my first big ones. And I was cruising over there on the, where was I? I was on the southeast coast of Savaii in a little surf camp and surfing with some pretty awesome Aussie boys. And yeah, it was such an incredible location. I mean, Samoa, I've always had such a soft spot for Samoa. The people and the culture and just how basic life is in the best possible way. And we've been back a fair few times since, and there's always seems to be some sort of natural disaster that's just happened there, or they're recovering from something. So they're pretty resilient humans, which I've always respected. And yeah, 2009 was no different. I was over there on a surf trip, and yeah, I think it was an 8.3 magnitude earthquake. I can't actually remember where it was, but yeah, created a bit of a ripple.
I think
really.
It was from what I've seen, it was between Samoa and American Samoa. So tell us, were you on your own, and how long did you plan to go for?
So I was actually on the end of my trip. I was due to fly out the next day, funnily enough. So it was my last day there. I'd been there for about 10 days or 2 weeks. And at that point I was by myself. Everyone else had kind of flown out. And as mentioned, there was a pretty cool crew in the camp, so that was awesome. And the setup there was so good because you could leave your little beach hut basically and just paddle straight out, and there was this awesome right-hander right in front, and then there were a couple other waves. So wave access was as good as it gets for a reef break. And yeah, that was a classic. Woke up a bit dusty, had a few beers with the boys the night before, doing a few kind of stretches and waking up on the beach, and the ground started rumbling under my feet a little bit. And I think coming from Wellington, you're pretty desensitized to earthquakes, because I kind of just figured, whatever, it's just another little tremor, nothing to worry about, and paddled out really.
Yeah, amazing. I've never felt an earthquake in my life. I've just left places and they've hit afterwards, and I don't know what it feels like. I have no idea. But for those that don't know, Wellington's one of the more seismic regions of the world. So in a pretty seismic country, it's one of our, probably gets hit the most. There's a kind of fault line that runs through New Zealand that goes up through Christchurch, up the backbone of the Southern Alps, and then goes through Wellington, right? So yeah, you would have been well used to it.
Yeah, no, it's every few weeks you're getting some sort of a rumble, and none of the door frames are square, and the doors don't close, and everything's moving around in our Wellington home. So pretty quirky wee place, and nothing. Yeah. Was it a grunty shake, or was it nothing? You'd experienced plenty just like it. It was quite long. I remember it 2-3 minutes, and because there was no structure or houses or buildings near me, you don't really notice how strong it is. Like normally you will hear windows rattle and door frames, and you can, the kind of other things make you more aware of how powerful something like that is. But there it was just palm trees and sand, and it was a pretty solid shake, and no doubt I'm pretty sure I got in the water as it was getting going, because I kind of just jumped off the beach and away I went, and I actually think it seriously got going after I got in the water, and then paddled out to the boys, and there were about 4 of us in the water surfing on the day.
Did those guys that were already out, did they feel anything? I've often wondered, could you feel anything if you were in the water? Did they know it had happened?
No, that was the interesting part of it, is I paddled out, and then everyone was catching a few waves and all that kind of stuff, bit of banter, and then we did start to see water moving, and everyone was really confused because they didn't know, and then I basically said, look, I felt a pretty solid earthquake as I jumped in, and then as everything really started moving, we kind of put 2 and 2 together and realised we might be in a bit of trouble here, really.
Shit. So when you say the water started moving, was there just strange surges, or did you see that it was retracting back off the beach, or how did that play out?
The best way I can describe it is if you're ever in a bathtub or a swimming pool or something and somebody's making lots of waves, it was like really short chop waves. There was no wind. It was a really glassy morning, and it was just really sloshy. Everything around us was sloshing, which is kind of a weird description, but lots of short period waves. And when we looked out to the headland, because on the right hand side of us, or the eastern side, there was a bit of a headland that ran out, that if you looked over your shoulder facing the shore, but if you looked right, you would see this headland. And what we could see was not only this water sloshing around and acting quite strangely, but the headland, it was like being on a treadmill. Like, we were getting sucked out to sea, and we were watching this headland zoom past us, basically, which took us a little bit of time to work out what was happening. And obviously at that point we're like, righto, so we're obviously being sucked out as part of this tsunami, I guess, or surge that was about to happen. And then I suppose what was even funny, well, not funnier, but on reflection, you kind of really hits home, but the started to see all the utes leaving the campsite, so everyone was evacuating. So we started to see these Land Rovers just starting to load up and shoot out the back of the camp as they drove along the water and then up into the hills. And we were, pretty much on our own at that point.
No one ran down on the beach and started yelling and waving at you?
Not really, and I think they might have been smarter humans than us, really, in the fact that they knew that it was going to be deep water underneath us. At least that's what I like to think, because we were actually okay. We got sucked quite far off the reef shelf, and everything rolled underneath us. So luckily we were okay. And I do wonder if maybe they thought, look, one thing at a time. Let's just get everyone land out, and then these boys that are in the water, they'll just get sent out to sea, and we'll worry about that later. One thing at a time.
Yeah. And so what was the vibe like with the boys? Was there a bit of panic? Were people going, this is a tsunami? What are we going to do? We go in? Do we try and go out?
Again, everyone was pretty pragmatic. It was very much one thing at a time. We all kind of stayed together, which was the main thing. Our brains weren't working in a way to think about the consequence of what might be happening. It was very much just head above water, stay together. At one point, some of the team did try and swim against it to shore, but I mean, it was pretty short-lived. There was just absolutely no way you were going to fight this thing or have any control. You were seriously just a bit of driftwood in the ocean at that point, and we just stayed together and got sucked out to sea, effectively.
How far out do you reckon you went? Like, did you paddle with it and go even further? Or was that a thought, or did you just
we didn't, because it was we just kind of sat on the boards, because at that point you're just not processing stuff at that macro level. It is seriously just let's just stay together, sit on our boards. It wasn't even like a preserve energy thing. It was just like, let's just control what we can control. And I think had we thought that way, we might have even ended up in more trouble, if I reflect on that now, because what happened was this wave rolled underneath us, and we shot out to, I don't know how far we were, but we would have been a few hundred meters offshore, and it must have been really deep at that point, because we looked back and we could see this dry reef, and we could see fish flapping around on it from a distance, but we could still make things out. But then because it was deep enough, we didn't see this huge, big, enormous wave roll through on the horizon. It effectively was this endless surge that came underneath us, and we drifted onto that reef, almost back onto that reef shelf. Or it's almost like being out back when you're surfing. We drifted into where we were originally, that kind of out back of the break, and everything just washed underneath us. And then that was incredible, because we were quite close at that point, and you could see this thing hit the land, and I mean, it was this most enormous big fountain that just shot up as it hit the shore, and then just kept going. It just went and went and went, and it just the power of it just blew through all the infrastructure, the trees, everything. And amazingly, it didn't decimate everything, but it was just, if you were a person in there, I think you'd just get washed for miles inland, basically.
Jesus, that's unreal, isn't it? And so, was it just one wave or more than one?
So that was the
Did you
one
get
wave.
sucked back out again, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we got pushed onto that, quite close to the reef, watched that all happen, and then we were getting yo-yoed back up to sea. So as those surges would come through, they'd hit the land, lose a bit of energy, and then we'd get sucked back out, and then it'd be the next one. So probably the most dangerous part was the fact that suddenly there was starting to become quite a lot of debris in the water. So there was roofing iron and bits of building and all sorts of stuff drifting past us, so it was not the safest place to be. And then also to try and get to shore, you couldn't try and paddle with the surge in the hopes to making it to shore, because you ran the risk of getting dry docked on the reef basically, and then you'd be stuck, and then the next surge would clean you out and you'd get, I can only imagine, cheese grated as you blew into the
whole way up. Yeah.
So, and that's why I think that if we had paddled out to sea originally, we would have been so much further out there. It would have been much harder to get to shore.
Yeah. So you just stayed put and just rode out those surges. And how many waves, if you had to estimate, can you remember how many waves came through?
I'd say we were out there for at least a couple hours. I don't know how many surges, but we're out there for a little bit of time. It's really hard to remember those kind of finer details because you're seriously just operating at that point. But one of the Aussie boys classically was like...
I thought you were going to say 10 minutes, I didn't... it's unreal. It goes for a lot longer than you think it would, eh?
Yeah, with the power. And I mean, we had to wait for that energy to dissipate a bit because, as mentioned, if you were going to try and make that dash to shore and you didn't, if you got sucked back and you ended up on the reef, you were just kind of toast, really. So, one of the Aussies actually had to be an Aussie, but he was like, I reckon I could make the dash. And we're like, good luck to you, man. Like, all right, we're into this. So it was pretty impressive, but he paddled with the surge. He just paddled his ass off. He was basically like, almost on the plane, I guess you could say, and he made it. And we were like, oh man, and he just made it. It was pretty impressive. Got to the beach, got to the high ground, which wasn't much of it, but you kind of at that point could assess the situation from the land and waved us in, and then one by one, luckily everyone was pretty fit and healthy, to be fair, but paddled as hard as you could and got to the beach, and man, we were pretty lucky. It was just the most incredible. No one was injured, no one, everyone came out totally unscathed.
Crazy. And so just talk me through, so where the surf camp is it kind of on a peninsula, or does it just go inland and rise up a hill, or
it's basically at the base of a mountain. It's quite a mountainous area, and then you had this little, it's like paradise, but this little beach pocket with a bit of flat land, so the peninsula, then you had this little kind of cutout where this beautiful little beach and reef and all that area was, and then it was the surf camp, which was just a few huts and just some wooden structures, and then if you kept going back round to the west, there was a river, and I think that was where the real damage came from, because I think everything pushed inland and then concentrated itself up the river. I mean, it wasn't a big one, but I think, and that was where a lot of the debris and all that stuff was coming from. So I think all that wave action shot up that river and cleaned out a lot of the little villages and stuff along it. Yeah.
So at the point that you get to the beach, what's the water doing now? Is it all kind of sucking back off the land? Has the inland surge finished and it's all coming back out?
So we actually got back to shore. A ute raced in, so they must have got everyone to high ground, shot back, then they evacuated us. So we jumped on this ute and basically shot into the hills for another 6 hours until they lifted the tsunami warning. At which point we could go back in, but it was very much still surging, and obviously I think more and more debris was getting flushed out to sea and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot.
Did you get a look at the surf camp at that point? Could you see it before you left in the ute? Could you see the damage done to the camp?
Yeah, you could. And what I thought was really interesting is because I think it was a bunch of wooden structures that, like, you know, a wave like that will just wash through a little. All the uprights were still there. The decking was a little bit damaged, but pretty much still there. But I think because none of that energy, wasn't hitting a brick wall, it could just shoot out the back of a lot of these buildings. It did just exactly that. It just washed through it. So from that standpoint, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the kind of jungle or forest around it was pretty damaged. But yes, I was actually absolutely amazed that most of that stuff was in relatively good shape. But I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of work to do for those poor guys after that.
Yeah, and of course all your stuff, boof, gone, yeah?
Well, that's a funny story actually. That was because I was flying out the next day, when we finally got back to the camp. I started wandering around looking for my possessions because in my head I thought, oh well, it's probably time to start packing up and see if we can get a flight tomorrow, kind of thing. And I managed to find my passport, found a few clothes, some surfboards, my surfboard bag. So it was it's a bit like shopping in the jungle. You're picking bits of clothes off. That's my shirt there, and you grab it off a tree branch, and those are my shoes. Where's the other one, kind of thing. So managed to get a lot of stuff together as much as I could, and then did just jump on a flight the next day because they were running emergency flights, and had my passport. That was nice and easy. So it was pretty surreal, really. And then back in 2009, I don't even think I had a cell phone, so it was one of those ones where you call Dad from a payphone at the airport and kind of tell him the yarn. And he's pretty funny. He didn't even realise, he didn't even clock that. Oh yeah, my son's in Samoa and there's been a huge earthquake. So anyway, he was relieved, but it was quite funny. Like at that time, you don't even know where your kids are. Yeah. So that was funny.
So it ended up being huge, right? I think it was 190 odd people died. Was there any of that around you guys? Did you have a sense of any of that at that point? Or had all the surf camp folks been able to get out of there safely? And so I guess they didn't. I guess it would have been days before they found out what had happened in the rest of the island, right?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, like the infrastructure was so damaged. I think luckily the camp, as I said, young fit people there. There wasn't any. Everyone could move. Everyone could look after themselves. No one was really compromised. So I think from that standpoint, super lucky. You are right. Like there was heaps of damage, and a lot of people came out of that, and not so great. But from that standpoint, and then it was quiet. It was quite a quiet time. I think there were only 5 or 6 surfers there. And then because it was so mountainous in that area, everyone could get out and get up into the high ground very quickly. But yeah, no doubt, I'd say some of those other locations would have been absolutely decimated. And I saw some of those photos, and it was like someone had taken a wrecking ball to some of those villages and towns.
Yeah. When you were in the mountains, were there a lot of people up there? Were you kind of in a huge group, or was there civil defence up there or anything like that?
No, really community run. It was basically in the local, I don't know what they call them, but it was basically like the town hall of this little village. I mean, everything's so small there anyway. You're talking little gravel road is the main road through the centre of town, and there's 10 huts around it, and that's kind of the town. And that was what that was. So I could only imagine heaps of that was happening all over Samoa. And and everyone was just listening to the radio. So there was no comms really. You couldn't really understand what was happening. You were just waiting for that green light to, it's all safe and you guys can come down now, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I was caught in in a fire in a small village in the South Island called Oho, and
Wow.
We spent the night. We had to evacuate. The fire pretty much burned the village to the ground. We evacuated and went to Twizel, which is half an hour away.
Yeah.
But we were there with all the residents of that village, and one by one they were hearing that their places had been destroyed, and and it was heavy. That was their homes, their lives, everything was gone.
Mm.
So were you there with the surf camp owners and stuff? Were they with you up in the? Did you talk to them or see them? Must have been hard for them.
I think it was. I think there was a big relief that, as mentioned, there was a lot of the structural aspects of the houses and all that kind of stuff still intact. But I shot off and caught that flight. But no doubt there would have been so much heartache. Everyone was very nervous, apprehensive, making sure their loved ones are all right. So I think it was that initial stage of that realization as to what the future looked like, and I think the benefit to that really is because they've got such a strong sense of community over there. Everyone was really helping each other, which I really felt. So it was, as horrible as it was really amazing to see all these people really coming together and helping each other. And I think where we were on the island as well, we were quite lucky because it didn't bear the brunt of that tsunami. We were a little bit more protected than some of the other areas. So I could only imagine what some of those, you're looking for family members and all that kind of stuff in other areas.
Yeah. And do you know, Chris, if the surf camp still exists? Is it still there? Did they rebuild?
It's funny you say that. We actually just tried to go back last year because, as mentioned, it was so awesome. But unfortunately, COVID absolutely hammered those island nations because of those shutdowns, and that's their cash flow. So a lot of them, those resorts were not only hit by natural disasters over subsequent years, but then all of those lockdowns meant they had no cash flow to fix any of their buildings and stuff. So a lot of that's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. They've shut that stuff down, and that one is a classic example of try to go back and it doesn't exist anymore. So it's a bit sad, and maybe one day.
Yeah, what a pity.
Yeah.
I did a surf trip at Hatafu in Tonga, and
cool.
that had suffered the same fate. Right,
Yep.
Absolutely flattened and washed away, and to my knowledge, hasn't been rebuilt. I guess if you were going to rebuild it, you would probably, thinking about what you've said about the structures of these the buildings, put them on big solid stilts, right? So maybe a tsunami could go underneath them. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Or just not worth it,
Yeah, build them 10 metres in the air if you're going to do it, I suppose. But that's always the risk in paradise, I think. It's great to go on holiday, but you don't realise how vulnerable you are with those when it all goes bad. What a magic spot. I hope it comes back to life, and that's the most incredible place to travel.
Do you know if the reef itself was lifted, or do you know if the reef itself was lifted?
Not that I was aware of. I saw photos later on of the wave breaking, and that's such a good indication as to, if the wave had changed, you would know if the reef changed, and it didn't seem to have. It looked like it was all as it was, so that's quite lucky because it's the most incredible right-hander ever.
Yeah, we won't, Right, we've got to keep some of these things a secret. I'm pretty aware that a lot of the boys that I'm talking to and girls have got their spots that they don't really want to give away. Kept a few secret for sure.
Bit of a secret, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one crazy story. It's actually it's actually good advice, like these things happen and have happened, in my lifetime. I think probably the Samoa tsunami, the Tonga one, and the Boxing Day tsunami come to mind in my surfing lifetime. So that's since 2004, and there must have been. I'm sure I'll talk to people that were surfing and when that Boxing Day tsunami hit. So actually, being out in the water, and if you're aware that there's something has happened, and you'll obviously see the water changing, but it's quite good advice, right? You guys didn't know what you were supposed to do, but it worked out kind of well. Like a lot of people might have thought, right, maybe we need to turn and head out further. And actually some of the footage you see from Boxing Day, they look like those waves were breaking miles out, eh? So I guess it's all to do with the topography of the bottom and how deep it goes, but those reefs around Samoa and Tonga and stuff, they get pretty deep pretty quick, right?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. It just depends on the composition of the coastline. As mentioned, this was one of those few reef breaks that was right there on the doorstep, but if it had been your classic reef break that was 800 meters out to sea, and you've got this big shallow atoll and you've got to paddle all the way out there and all that stuff, I think it'd be a very different story, because it'd be, as you've described, it'll be one of those ones where you end up with this big wall of white water to the horizon, basically.
Yeah. What would you do, eh? I suppose you just try and duck dive it and keep paddling out against it, eh? And it'll eventually pull you in over the land, and just do your best, I guess. Nothing you can do, eh?
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's made me seriously. Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's definitely made me super aware.
Say that again, Chris. It's made you what?
Oh, it's just definitely made me super aware of what can happen on surf trips. And I mean, me and my buddy just went on a surf trip to Fiji. We've just become dads, so it's been like the first time we've had a green light for a mission in ages. That kind of approach is just very different now. Proper first aid kits, and you're telling people where you are, and in your head you definitely, I just used to be pretty happy-go-lucky wherever you ended up, and now you just think about things a bit more, and wherever I see a evacuation sign, I definitely kind of pay attention a little bit more. Just in the back of your head, you're thinking, oh, maybe one day I'm going to need that. So not bad awareness. Yeah.
Actually, one of the boys I've spoken to, whose boat sank in Indo, their ferry, he travels always now with an EPIRB.
Oh.
So, and it was great advice. He said you get your EPIRB, but you don't get it in Indo or the country that you're travelling in. You get it in your home country, because when you send off the distress signal, it goes back to your home country first, and then they contact the authorities in the country that you're in. So, but it just means that you got someone back home that's managing the process. So, yeah, I thought that was solid advice.
That's very good advice. I think I've listened to that one. Are those the guys that ended up in that cyclone that blew through, the two boats separated?
A heavy storm. That's it. Yeah, it's an unbelievable story. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gobsmacked when I listened to that. I just thought, those guys, what mental toughness. They just stuck it out.
Yeah, incredible.
Well done.
Yeah, well done to you too, man. So, listen, thanks for sharing your story. It was, it was good, and some good practical knowledge. This is not something that I thought would come out in this podcast, but in actual fact, every single guest has had a little nugget of wisdom, that we can all hold in our minds, when we go and do these things we do.
No, it's so good. I mean, that's why we do it, right? Just get out there and enjoy the elements, and if you could learn something from it, then pass it on.
Yeah, cool. All right, Chris, appreciate it.
Thanks,
all
mate.
the best,
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have a mad surf story or know of one, get in touch by emailing me at james@dragonbrothersbooks.com. The following is a chapter of one of my surf novels. You can listen to the rest wherever you get your audiobooks, including Spotify, Audible, Apple Books and Google Play. Or, if you like books made of paper, you can find them on my website at dragonbrothersbooks.com. Just click on the menu and select Books for Adults. Or you can buy them on Amazon. All the best.
Mine. Written by James Russell and narrated by Luke Davis. Chapter 3. My name is James Brennan and I'm 26 years old. Everyone, even my mum, has called me Jimmy since the day I was born. We used to live within walking distance of Snapper, but when Dad died, Mum sold the house and moved to Mudgerborough. I thought it was a dump, but she said it was more like where she came from anyway. I'm on my way to her now, but first I dropped my board into the horses to get the ding repaired. I'm still fuming. As always, the horse demands to know what happened. He has a good laugh at my story, his messed up tombstone teeth poking out through his rubbery purple lips. It lightens my mood a bit, even though he quotes me $60. They reckon the horse must be a millionaire. He fixes that many boards. But I'm fucked if I know what he does with his money because his house is a shithole. In the yard there's wrecked cars and piles of timber and bloody fly-flecked fish bins. Heaped high against the house are 1,000 sacks of fuck-knows-what, all beginning to split at the seams. There's even a child's buggy, but he doesn't have a missus, let alone a kid. Everywhere, even on the roof, there are empty 4X cans. The horse has never surfed a day in his life, and doesn't have the slightest interest in it. But he's a magician when it comes to fixing a board. If you ding your board within the first 6 months of owning it, when you're still precious about it, he's the only man for the job. I leave the board with the horse, who says he'll have it done in a couple of days, then drive the 20 minutes to Mudgerborough. I know Mum will offer to make me breakfast, but it's always fucking porridge and I can't stand it. I get a pie at the servo instead. I scoff it down because it's only lukewarm and there's more gristle than meat. As I pull into the driveway, I see Mum talking to Bruce, the neighbour, over the fence. Since his wife died last year, she talks to him a lot. I tease her that she spends more time leaning on that fence than she does on her walker. "Hello, love," she says as I get out of the car. "You're up early. Been surfing?" "Sort of," I reply. Bruce gives me a nod and goes back inside. I hold Mum's elbow as she goes up the ramp to the house. She concentrates fiercely as she goes. The walking frame leads, her good leg next and the bad one dragging behind. The thick sole on her shoe has worn down on one side. The house is as neat as a pin, apart from a single mug on the kitchen table. I wonder what she thinks about each morning as she sits there drinking her tea. Me, probably. Both my mum and dad came from Irish backgrounds, but my mum never got the memo that she was supposed to have loads of kids, so there's just my sister Rachel and me. Rachel's only 2 years older than I am, but in life she's streets ahead. When we were at school it was predestined to be the other way around. I was the bright one, the doctor, the lawyer. She left school as early as she could and got work in a hairdresser's purely so that she could afford to leave home. She went from sweeping up the hair to cutting it in less than 3 months. Within 3 years she'd bought the salon from the owner. One day she cut the hair of a young banker and now they have 3 girls. He was from Mud, but they moved to Broad Beach and then to the waterways at Macintosh Island as he got bigger and bigger pay rises. She sold the salon and got a heap of cash for that too. It's basically what happened to my mum, but in reverse. Mum and I sit in the kitchen for a while drinking mugs of tea. My cup says, "World's Best Mum" on the front, and I spin it around so it's facing her. "Are you though?" I say, tapping the mug. "Prove it." She smiles and offers me porridge. She has this look, my mum, like she's worn out by life. It's like a mixture of plain wrecked, tired and resignation that her lot is not quite what she'd paid for, but there's fuck all she can do about it. She looks defeated, broken by the hand she's been dealt. Mum asks me to cut the grass, so I wheel the lawnmower out of the garage and fire it up. There are long tufts where the sprinkler has strayed, but the rest's more stones and dirt than grass. Clouds of dust rise into the air. When I'm done, I wheel the mower back into the garage and pause in the silence to wipe the sweat off my brow. Dad's tools are on the workbench, and there's a tub of old rags, on top of which I recognise strips of his old Broncos t-shirt. All of a sudden I'm 16 again and it's my birthday. I'm out of the house early and into my wetty, and I'm walking down beside the garage to get my board, and I see through the grimy garage window my dad wearing that same t-shirt, and he's passed out in the shitty old armchair he dragged in there so that he can sit in it and drink all night. There are cans all over the table and his usual Jim Beam bottle lying empty on the floor. He had his mates with him last night when I went to bed, but now he's on his own. I quietly stand in the doorway and stare at him, hate sizzling in my head. There are 2 unopened cans of 4X on the floor beside his chair, and I sneak in to get them, and it's then that I twig he isn't snoring. He usually sounds like a pig gorging from a trough. I get the cans and straighten up to look at his face. He's a shade of purple and stone still, and straight away I know he's dead. The stillness and silence are suddenly so deep that I'm overawed by it, like you get when you walk into an empty church. I'm not afraid. The hate's replaced with a kind of wonder. I've wanted to kill him so many times, but now he's gone and done the job himself. Walls topple, possibilities stretch in all directions. I stare at him for a long time and watch as a fly walks around on his face, stopping at the moisture of his lips. Finally, I tear myself away from his face. There's a pack of cigs on the table and I check if there are any left. Nothing. I think about checking his pockets for money, but I don't want to touch him and there'll be fuck all anyway. The thought occurs to me that I'd only be stealing from my mum now too. I take the 2 4Xs and stash them under the garage, then grab my board and jog to the beach. I remember the surf that morning, small and razor-edged, machine-cut, a stiff offshore sending a fine spray from the falling lip of each wave. The older guys were struggling, I remember, but I must have weighed 60 kilos and I was as quick to my feet as I've ever been before or since. Up the point they snaked and jostled and pushed each other too deep, and I waited until they inevitably couldn't make the section and dropped in. I got a bucket load of waves, tearing along the green walls and folding myself into the smallest of barrels which seemed to spin forever. I didn't think about my dad once that morning as I rode those waves. What I remember most was the weightlessness, the freedom. I can still see the extraordinary colour of everything. Cerise dawn and then golden sunlight, straw-hued sand, water turning from copper to 1,000 shades of blue as the sun rose, foam as white as snow. It had a clarity I hadn't noticed before, a vividness that seemed brand new. I roll the mower under the workbench and sweep out the garage. I open the lid of the wheelie bin. In a week, Mum's produced so little rubbish that it doesn't seem worth bringing it out to the gate, but I do it anyway. These are my Sundays and I know I'm a sad fuck. I should have been lying in bed with Jess all morning, then heading out for brunch with the rest of the hungover crew and then on to Sunday Arvo drinks. But I walk back inside and see my mum's little back hunched over the sink and her hand, white-knuckled, gripping her walker, and I see the ham sandwiches under the gauze cloth on the table and I know that I'm stuck.